Honors Biology project is about how flora and fauna are affected by flooding in a riparian environment, especially relating to Manti Creek here in Sanpete County. This is an example of a river that is flooding, and you can tell because it has reached bank full or its full capacity, and it's floating, the water is flowing over onto these flat spaces on the outside of the river that are normally shown by other areas not covered by water. And these are some examples of flora and fauna. An in-course activity outside of the academic classroom that's been a positive experience for me this year, or this semester, has been when Dr. Roth and I got to go up to Manti Canyon and observe a gauging station that tells how much water is flowing down the river at a certain time. So we started by driving over to Manti City and going up into the canyon, which is in the Manti-La-Salle National Forest. And one of the first things that you see is this hydroelectric plant. So it converts electricity from running water. And in the background of this top picture, you can see that there's a bunch of plains. And in the bottom, you can see that all this water is being diverted to different places like homes and the city, and even farms that are making crops like the fields behind in the first picture that you see. So that just shows how important water really is to our society these days, and it has always been. You drive up a little bit farther and you see all these really steep, beautiful mountains, and this is creating a watershed. A watershed is an area, a ridge of land that separates waters flowing to different rivers, streams, basins, or seas. So in this case, all the water from snow mountain precipitation is going down into the lowest point, creating the Manti Creek. Then we parked and walked in to where we were going to go to see the gauging station, and you see this map. And we'll hone in onto this part that says Manti. So you see the Manti City, and you may have been to Skyline Drive before, so it's in that general area, and that star up there is showing where we were at that point. Next to that, we saw that rattlesnakes may be present, so this was one of our first signs of some fauna that was going to be in this riparian environment in Manti. We walked in about a quarter of a mile, and we saw this, which I recognized as a floodplain, and we turned around and saw even more. If you don't already know, a floodplain is a low-lying place of ground that's adjacent to a river, so that when the river reaches its full capacity and needs to overflow, it'll overflow onto this space of land. This was quite a big floodplain after I measured it and knew that it was 100 feet in diameter. We finally got to the gauging station, and you can see that this gauging station is quite big compared to how small I am over there. So this first cylinder is where data is put in and used on this pole. It's a transmitter that brings the information to a satellite, which is then put onto a website so that we can all see the flow rate of this river in cubic feet per second. And all of that is measured in this cylinder. So we'll look in this hole, like I am right there, and you see this yardstick measured in feet. And this yardstick works by, when the water rises, because there's more water in this flowing down this river, a little float from the bottom rises up and then gets recorded in a little box above, which then it's sent to the other cylinder that I showed you, to the transmitter satellite, and then to the USGS website. The USGS website USGS stands for United States Geological Survey. So it's a group that collects, monitors, and gives out information that we can all see about natural resources in the United States. And this website was pretty hard for me to maneuver around because there's a lot of different options of things that you can see in this website. But one of the really cool things that I found was this graph about peak stream flow. And you can see that in 2010 up there, it was the highest stream flow ever since 1964 when the gauging station was set in place. And this definitely answers the question about what was most difficult in regards to accessing and analyzing information that I found, because I needed to use all this information that I found on this website to relate to what I saw in the Manti Canyon regarding the flooding and how that may affect other things there, other living things like the flora and the fauna. We walked up a little farther upstream, and we got onto this bridge and looked out onto another floodplain and up the river. So we hiked up the river even more, and we saw this algae growing on a rock. So I knew from biology class that this is a protist, and I turned around and saw some lichen on a rock, which I also knew was a symbiotic relationship between fungi and algae. Dr. Roth and I were lucky enough to find this shell from a living thing that was from I knew later in the year that it was from phylum Mollusca and class Gastropoda, usually implying that it's a snail. And that's the back of that. This was a really cool find that I found really interesting. I then got curious, and I went home and researched a bunch of other living things that could be in this Manti Creek environment, such as the bacteria E. coli in cottonwood trees and deer and even humans lower, and some Giardia, as you can see up there, which is a harmful protist for this environment. And I created an Excel spreadsheet showing all of the different things I found, and I classified them all and using the Linnaeus classification system as homework. So how is my curiosity and imagination, how did I use it to achieve positive results? I used it because I didn't necessarily see all these animals in the Manti Creek, but I had to look on the internet and find what environment they would live in, and then I imagined them being there in this environment to make everything work together and show that there's actually these things living in this environment. And I didn't really get to collaborate with any classmates in this project because Dr. Roth didn't have any other honors students in biology, but I had the chance to collaborate with a professional named Chris Phillips, and he is the president of River Bend Engineering, which is a company that restores rivers that have been hurt or damaged. So he showed me a bunch of slides, mostly about how rivers work and some of the things that are affected by flooding and how flooding happens. And he also drew me a lot of pictures, so he really helped me understand how rivers work, and that really let me understand my project better before I could fully analyze everything. How have my skills as a communicator improved? I've learned how to communicate more professionally with people and ask the right questions that are going to get me to the right answers that I will need to know for my project. A problem that I've encountered this semester was that I don't have the advanced enough math skills yet to calculate what a bank full of a river is, which is when the river reaches its full capacity and it needs to overflow onto other space. And that was critical to what flooding is, but since I couldn't calculate that yet, I talked to Mr. Phillips, and he helped me, he told me how to calculate this and how what Manti Creek's bank full actually is. And a situation where my initiative was important was when I took it upon myself to organize the Manti Creek field trip that Dr. Roth and I took, and what I needed to see there to understand everything better, and also what I needed to talk about when I met with Mr. Phillips. And I've benefited a lot from this honors course because I learned how to actually work with a professional and how much one person can know about their specific subject, and also how to manage my time better because I realized getting to near the end of this project that I didn't have quite enough information to make a final presentation on what I did. So now I know that in future I'll need to manage my time better and get stuff done sooner so that I can be fully prepared at the end. And I've also learned how to be more independent because in this kind of course you don't get as much help from teachers as I have in the past. And lastly, for this question, I've learned how to search things a lot better because Dr. Roth taught me that if you put in site:/edu or gov or org, you can get more specific searches that pertain to what you want to know. And my work definitely justifies honors credit this semester because I'm sure you hear it a lot, but I worked hard, spent a lot of time at it, and did research. But I went beyond what's normal, and I also took time out of my day to meet with a professional in the business and actually get stuff done with him and understand rivers better. And after all, I answered my big question, which was how flora and fauna is affected by flooding in an environment. And I made a Google document with a ton of different reasons, and now I really understand how things can be affected by just one flood in a river. Thank you.